What do a magician's hat, Mount Crumpet, some magic feed corn, a harmonica, and Fred Astaire all have in common? They're all part of the Christmas story. These are traditions that for many, myself included, that keep us celebrating Christmas the only way we know how, from our holiday friends. Stop motion magic and the classic Christmas specials up next on PopCon.
Get away from her, you bitch.
Welcome to PopCon, a salute to all pop culture, but mostly the 80s. I'm your host, Victor, and today is a first. It's the first annual PopCon Christmas special, and we're talking about just that, those Christmas time specials we remember growing up and watching with our families. The ones that told the story of Christmas in various ways and introduced us to various characters in different media. Although many of them are broadcast today, some of them are edited and some have even retired, but their meaning to my generation will never waver. Some of the best specials weren't even made in the 80s, but popular culture and popcorn transcends generations. And as a kid of the 70s and 80s, every time one of these classics came on the air, it might as well have been the first time it was broadcast. Christmas specials have had a roller coaster of a history, and although on occasion a rare one-off style holiday event can be made, it rarely has the same impact for a variety of reasons. Let's face it, it's not easy to create a serendipitous formula that unwittingly gives rise to a legendary classic. But it is because of them that our love of the holiday season and our warmth of the family experience is manifested each year, and why many of us do not let go of those traditions we made as young people as time goes by. So sit back and relax as PopCon presents its first annual Christmas special and discover a time capsule of magic and how watching these mini events each year meant everything to us and why they're still special today in this, our Pop Retrospective. A lot of folks may not know this, but these classics began over 55 years ago. Imagine, not born of a television series, but a standalone event. And yet, we continue to indulge in those singular episodes year after year. What is the draw? Why are they holiday must-sees? Let's see if we can figure it out together. The true keepers of the flame from the start and for about 18 different holiday specials was Rankin and Bass. You may have heard of them, and those in my generation definitely heard of them, not only for Rudolph, but for the Thundercats. Yep, the same team to bring you Hermie the Dentist and the Bumble brought you Mum-Ra and Lion-O. But this is about Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, who made his debut in 1964 and was sponsored by General Electric. It used animagic stop motion. That was the hallmark of the Rankin and Bass technique. As the title suggests, it follows the story laid out for us in the famous Johnny Mark song Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, which was itself based on a poem of the same name written in 1939. With a storyline that fills in much more than we originally knew of the yet-to-discover himself reindeer, ideas like the Island of Misfit Toys, Yukon Cornelius, and the Bumble don't seem to fit with the story of a successful flight of Santa Claus on a foggy Christmas Eve. But it did, and was so completely successful that it spawned two sequels of its own. Not as successful, but Rudolph's Shiny New Year and Rudolph and Frosty's Christmas in July, both from the 1970s, are still classics in their own right. Always touting be true to yourself and you'll go far, Rudolph stands the test of time, and you can't discount Burl Ives. The snowman narrator, who was an uncanny duplicate of the larger-than-life actor portraying him, helped audiences buy into the legitimacy of the first true Christmas special. It didn't take long for changes and edits. The next year, a new scene replaced an old, and edits began, as all of these specials would eventually face the pruning shears for more advertising time required by networks. And that, along with new scenes and deletions, makes each one ripe for bonus material and various cuts to explore on YouTube and their DVD releases. This special has never missed a Christmas. It is the longest running special in history. In an era where you needed a sponsor to fund the program, Coca-Cola was not looking for a documentary, so they asked the creative team of Charlie Brown if they had ever thought of a Christmas special. They hadn't, but they said yes and went about figuring out what that would look like. Charles Schultz, Lee and Bill Mendelsohn knew they wanted outdoor snow scenes, a Christmas pageant, everybody dancing, and even ice skating. but it had to be about something. It was decided it would be about the true meaning of Christmas. Vince Guaraldi's jazz music was not traditional Christmas music, but as Mendelssohn said, it had both adult and children's quality to it. The entire score, including the famed Linus and Lucy number, are now staples of holiday music listening. Its philosophy and deep connection with real people through the mouths of babes was so beloved as it captured the melancholy and occasional bitterness felt by some during this time of year. A reality of relatable vignettes wrapped up in childlike, colorful packaging. There were worries for such a groundbreaking endeavor. The beginning seemed too slow for the team, and to help add something to the ice skating opening number, Mendelssohn wrote the lyrics to Guaraldi's music in a poem at his kitchen table in 10 minutes. That would become the seminal classic, Christmas Time is Here. And what about the Bible passages? When Mendelssohn asked Charles Schulz if they should do it, he said, "If we don't, who will?" Those 2 minutes of magic are credited to the young Christopher Shea and the innocence in his voice as delivered by Linus. It drove the message of the meaning of Christmas home in a heartbeat, and no advertising agency or executive balked at the results. However, the executives at CBS didn't get it. Children's voices for the children? That had never been done before. There was no laugh track like the Flintstones, and an original jazz score seemed out of place. They didn't believe in it from the start, as they took a gamble on a 30-minute primetime special based on a newspaper comic strip. But they had to release it, and they waited for the response. The Charlie Brown shows continue on and on, Mendelssohn said. It's amazing to me how long and enduring this has been. We were lucky that we were producing TV specials in the 60s and 70s, where we got a huge audience. Those audiences are now parents and grandparents, and they've stuck with us throughout the years. It's been a wonderful and joyful ride for all of us. Those audiences are still around, but viewing has changed. Family dynamics and the ability to screen anytime, anywhere has changed how we are introduced to and how we connect with our entertainment choices. During those times, watching those specials was a family affair. And although the special has had some cuts for time, you can always find it in full glory somewhere. And who hasn't heard or themselves declared a scrawny little tree a Charlie Brown Christmas tree? It indeed lives in our pop culture lexicon.
Who put golden chunks of apple in a pie that's packed to go?
Dolly did it.
Who put juicy red cherries in a neat-to-eat treat? Who put a creamy chocolate filling in this great little pie?
Is this a test?
Nah, everyone knows it's Dolly Madison who makes delicious packed-to-go pies. Cherry, apple, and chocolate, all with flaky golden crusts. Dolly Madison did it.
Everybody knows that.
Continuing the holy trinity of original Christmas specials, each year a new production got on the bandwagon. It was 1966 when Dr. Seuss's Grinch would leap off the page and into our living rooms. The Grinch needed a sponsor to even be produced, and at the last moment, the only bite came from the Foundation for Commercial Banks. Once you know this, it makes the Grinch's line, "Perhaps Christmas doesn't come from a store," all the more ironic and symbolic. Dr. Seuss, or Theodore Geiss, worked with Chuck Jones in the United States Air Force in their new animation team for the motion picture department. If you've ever wondered why the Grinch occasionally takes on the look of a Warner Brother character, wonder no more. Reading the book out loud takes about 12 minutes. The animated special was 26 and filled in the gaps with very memorable comic relief in the form of Max the dog. Those additional story elements worked and needed very little dialogue, if any, to add to the original story. Thurl Ravenscroft of Tony the Tiger fame was not credited for his role in singing the Grinch's theme, and many people incorrectly assumed the narrator and the Grinch's voice, Boris Karloff, did the song. Dr. Seuss, so apologetic, penned a letter to every possible publication for Publish to apologize and give Thurl his dues. The budget for the Grinch was a whopping $300,000, or $2.2 million today. 1 year earlier, Charlie Brown's Christmas cost only $96,000. Although I remember turning my head at a couple of close-up shots of the Grinch and his creepy smile, he and this special remained one of the most popular and lives on in pop culture long after its debut. Used synonymously with another Christmas classic character, a Grinch is a universally understood name to call anyone humbugging the holiday revelry. Another entry from Rankin and Bass, they were not afraid to entertain us with the Christian roots of the holiday. Little Drummer Boy, like Rudolph, used the titular Christmas carol as inspiration for the production. But unlike the Rudolph song, there is little exposition in the lyrics, and it takes license to fill in the blanks. Just like they do in their lesser known and frightening special, Rankin and Bass's A Leprechaun Christmas, that uses Christmas in Killarney as a jumping off point. It's like nightmare fuel. The creative team made a simple story about wanting to give, but having nothing to give into something we could all get behind, including a heartwarming final scene where the little drummer boy plays his instrument while looking into the face of the baby Jesus, and the boy's hurt lamb is healed in return for giving of himself. The Little Drummer Boy was so popular, it spawned a sequel. But a sequel involving Roman soldiers not wanting to allow a peasant to make silver bells for the baby Jesus just sounds a little clunky. I wonder which song they were going to use for that one. Rankin and Bass were about to be on a roll, and they didn't just use animagic. Sometimes it was simply traditional animation. The premise was there, and the classic Gene Autry Christmas Carol, with all of the words you need to animate a primetime Christmas special of love and selflessness, lent itself in spades. Adding a villain in the form of a magician, Hinkle, who owns that magic hat that unfortunately never worked for him, made some level of conflict besides the children having to just get Frosty back to the North Pole. This annual classic is a simple tale and is animated in a very new style that was taking prevalence at the time, with the help of Hocus Pocus, the rabbit from the hat to keep Frosty alive, and on his journey to the North Pole, Karen travels in harsh conditions via train refrigerator car to her destination with her new best friend. This trip took a matter of hours, so I imagine these children lived in Alaska. We became so invested when Karen gets too cold to survive, and they end up in a greenhouse to save her, only to have Frosty inevitably melt away. You felt that lump in your throat, the same as when Elliot said goodbye to E.T. However, with a guest spot from Santa Claus coming to the rescue, reminding us at home that Frosty would return every Christmas, and he certainly delivered. If Burl Ives was a success in Rudolph, why not continue the trend with a megastar of Jimmy Durante, star of one of my favorite holiday films, The Man Who Came to Dinner? Jimmy Durante was the narrator for Frosty. Not only is this special rerun every year, but you can usually find him gallivanting in the 70s with the Rudolph sequel, and even another of lesser quality of his own in 1999, Frosty Returns. Happy birthday! It may be said often for another occasion, but there are few of us who resist shouting that greeting after topping off our own completed snowman with a hat of any kind. Keeping the tradition of celebrity voices, Rankin and Bass were going big with not one, but a number of notable classic stars to fill Santa Claus is Coming to Town. One of my personal favorites, this 1970 release is perfection when it comes to a cohesive story in what feels like a full-length feature film disguised as a Christmas special. Ingeniously melding both the secular and religious Christmas stories, legends and history into believable source material, Fred Astaire as the kindly narrator mailman and Keenan Wynn as the warlock were complemented by Mickey Rooney in a completely charming turn as Kris Kringle. It seems like such an adventure with various story arcs that were nicely tied up, and every question we had about Christmas as children answered, with the help of a penguin and some magic feed corn, was exactly what we were looking for. You can only see it once a year, and you wanted to be reminded of where all the holiday magic came from. I still get choked up as Mr. and Mrs. Claus are wed under the first Christmas tree lit by the Christmas star. It wasn't like watching a Christmas special. It was really like visiting an old friend. So why not have a sequel? It took 4 years, but using the same voice, a proper continuation of the story where Santa just didn't think people were interested in Christmas or believed in Santa Claus anymore. It felt it was the last of his midnight runs and would retire. Thankfully, the missus put him in his place. With side quests and multiple stories that should have made this soup into a hot mess, it actually did the opposite. Completing the story as convoluted as it was, we children believed Santa was fed up, but in the end, we would behold the truth of a world without Christmas and agree he was still necessary, and we, the viewer, would go to bed knowing that Christmas was saved for another year. Of course, this was all done with a little help from some nightmarish creatures that took years for me to watch without the filter of my fingers across my eyes. His brother Snow Miser wasn't so bad, but Heat Miser put me on edge. I was convinced he was a very jolly Satan. So famous is their song and dance number that in 2008, yes, 38 years later, those two got a Christmas special all their own, and some Funko Pops. Now that means you're a pop culture icon. I figured any special with Jessica Fletcher in it is worth mentioning. It's Angela Lansbury, for God's sake. You are required to enjoy it. To be honest, this is not played as much anymore, probably because of its positive religious views. But there is no denying a simple 1975 story of a nun who takes care of a blinded shepherd during Christmas has a profound effect on young viewers and helps to navigate and reinforce the goodwill that Christmas was famous for. The title stinks big time. The First Christmas, the story of the first Christmas snow. But this 1975 storyline of hope and love actually works to make the stop motion animagic more heartwarming. Even more melancholy than Charlie Brown, Jim Henson's Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas of 1977 is like Dolly Parton's Smoky Mountain Christmas with Muppets. The furry family is lovable and certainly makes you appreciate what you have as you witness them reminisce about their dearly departed family members, as they barely squeak by with only the hope of winning a local music contest and the $50 prize. Their cheerfulness is enough to avoid going down a completely dark and morose road of depression, as they will always have each other, especially as they do not win the contest or get the money in the end. But they do find honest employment, and they remind us that you don't need a lot to have Christmas when you have family. That's enough. It may not be a favorite of mine, but I know how important it is to many, and I've always appreciated some Jim Henson wizardry. The Core Muppets would have a very successful Christmas variety show with John Denver in 1979. Also in 1977, Rankin and Bass took a little Dumbo and a little bit of Rudolph to make a tearjerker for anyone, even if you weren't raised as a Catholic schoolboy. While other holiday specials may have had Christian undertones, this is Jesus all the way. Nestor has big ears, and it's not worth the price to pay by the Roman soldiers. Thrown out, he witnesses his mother's death and perhaps does not save the circus, but is special enough to carry Mary with her child to Bethlehem. Like Dumbo's ears, he was made fun of, but they came in handy like Rudolph's nose as he helped shield Mary from a sandstorm in the desert until they found the stable to have her child. No matter who you are or what shortcomings you think you have or adversity you have to overcome, it's what makes you different that makes you special, and you are worth your weight in gold to someone, and perhaps somebody very special too. It is of note that Walt Disney Animation would create another feel-good mule movie in a pre-feature cartoon called Small One the following year. You can catch that in various ways and see Disney's animation at its zenith, telling an alternate story of Christmas from another ass's viewpoint. Okay, I know I said we would not talk variety shows. That is a subject for next Christmas. There were so many celebrities hosting Christmas specials that showcase stars and acts for the holiday season that were so successful they were played year after year. Then there was this one, and I had to mention it. It was the highly touted Star Wars Holiday Special. It would debut on CBS in 1978 and quickly disappear for years. An embarrassment to Lucasfilm and the Star Wars stars who returned to make it as their stars were rising in the wake of the success of the original film. It had everything. Guests like Diane Carroll, Art Carney, B. Arthur headlined it, and Starship was the musical guest. More like a Thanksgiving special as it revolved around a fictional space holiday life day, nothing could save this travesty of a train wreck. It was quickly sidelined, locked in a vault, and allowed to become a legend, only spoken of in hushed conversations from those in the know to those who did not believe it. Lucky for all of us, we can see this miracle of bad taste and poor choices anytime today. If you can make it through the slow-paced runtime and sappy storytelling interspliced with crazy and often erotic specialty acts peppered in, like any train wreck, you may not look away. Thank goodness for the Boba Fett cartoon featured in the special. It's its only saving grace. It's getting closer to the 80s, an era of certain panache and elevated sense of self-purpose and greed. These feel-good moments of the past were losing their footing, and the specials were burning out. Not the horror version or even the one with Michael Keaton. The 1979 Jack Frost stop-motion spectacular seemed like a good idea indeed, but it never stood the test of time. The Cause of Winter, a robot army, a groundhog who not only narrates but makes a deal to extend winter so he can sleep, maybe even a cameo by Krampus, I don't know. Even as a child, you didn't mind passing up this crazy holiday one-off for a rerun of Casper's First Christmas, and the broadcasters knew it. It is rarely discussed, but easy to find. Before the era of excess took us in too deep, there was one more heartwarming Christmas special that did highlight what we all remember the holidays to be. It was a love letter to the holidays we grew up with, and perhaps a farewell of sorts to all those specials before it that had for the most part, tried and succeeded to help children and families remember the true reason for the season. The audience was growing up, advertising was stepping in more predominantly, and the winds of change were no longer coming from the north. You might think Alvin, Simon, and Theodore had already had a Christmas special due to their popular 1960s song, Christmas Don't Be Late. we were only listening to what seemed like a little Christmas special on vinyl each year and imagining the world of Dave Seville and his rodent prodigies in our mind. It was 1981 when they made their debut, and you may very well notice some familiar animation that looks very similar to the Grinch, if a little cuter. But it was Chuck Jones again, and he animated a beautiful tale that includes some strains of the old Christmas story Gift to the Magi. Not completely, but you feel it on your heartstrings as they're tugged by a sick child, a selfish Alvin, a surprise from Mrs. Claus, and a desire to make it right with the perfect gift to help someone who had nothing and help feel the spirit of Christmas. To this day, I watch this 1981 special every year, and I get a tear in my eye. It is a time I remember still being in single digits, still loving the Chipmunk Christmas song, but believing this was an extension or a sequel to their story and contained all the magic of Christmas that I wanted to feel each year and yearn to feel today. As intangible as it all is, it was this tale that brought it home for me. It didn't sell cereal or action figures. There was no Chipmunk Saturday morning cartoon to advertise. Well, at least not yet. Those would come, and would be the end of the Christmas special as we knew it.
Only from Atari. Made especially for systems from Atari. The video game that lets you help E.T. get home. Just in time for Christmas. Happy holidays from Atari.
VHS was the real killer. At least they began the slow demise. The industry boomed in the 1980s as more and more customers bought VCRs. By 1982, about 10% of households owned a VCR. The figure reached 30% in '85, and by the end of the decade, well over half of homes owned a VCR. With video, you could start to own your favorites and watch them whenever you wanted. Therefore, broadcasts were not as annual or consistent, and even edited. Talking to you, Rudolph. VHS isn't only to blame, but the 1980s took the special on a nosedive. Yes, there were certainly countless new specials, but they were often live TV broadcasts to market a new movie or event, along with current Hollywood celebrities to host. Not a variety show of crooners and guest stars in holiday settings and faux Christmas parties in festive attire, but ads for Hollywood coming attractions dressed up as a holiday special. Every single TV show and popular cartoon had their famous Christmas episode. It was no longer an original story of the magic of Christmas or the origins behind it that brought a family together to watch, but an episode of your favorite nighttime drama or sitcom or Saturday morning cartoon character you could catch at its normal time, or perhaps the rare one-off during prime time, but usually to push the brand and the accompanying media and products. As this was now the norm, it was something we came to expect, and we didn't have to look for a new holiday favorite. They were there at their scheduled time. You could find all of them still today somewhere, but networks do not usually take the time to broadcast for various reasons. And things like Christmas Comes to Pac-Land in 1982 and the He-Man and She-Ra Christmas from 1985 are practically forgotten. Disney made another successful short prior to the re-release of the 1977 film The Rescuers in 1983. It may have begun as a short subject before the main feature, but it took its place on broadcast TV on NBC the very next year and for many years to come. It was an exceptional and welcome retelling of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol in a 26-minute animated short of incredible quality, starring Scrooge McDuck as Ebenezer, Mickey Mouse as Bob Cratchit, and Goofy as the ghost of Jacob Marley. It was a Disney Christmas gift that, although does not follow the formula of original specials, is a bright spot in the bleak lineup made for TV during the 80s. There were some standouts in the era. One in particular comes from the same source as the Peanuts, the Sunday Funnies, or comic strips. Garfield's Christmas in 1987. This special had a long run and did feel more like an original event special we remember from our childhood. Not really pushing any product or any other media content, it shines and it is worth revising each year. The end is most notable with the voice of Lorenzo Music. the voice of Garfield and the doorman from Mary Tyler Moore, coming over the credits to inspire viewers to find out more about the history and story of Christmas at their library, and listing some quality books to check out, encouraging young minds. DVD in 2000 was hammering the proverbial nail in the coffin on original content creation. But it seems to be that it is device technology allowing us to stream at our fingertips that has us no longer awaiting the arrival of our friends with pageantry and enthusiasm of a birthday. On few and far between occasions, a new special debuts, with nothing but the intent to entertain or remind us of what the holidays should be about. Long after all the franchised and contrived storylines that accompanied the gross-out humor of the 90s was over, a small number of true feel-good classics have emerged, with some becoming annual events to be enjoyed for generations to come. Creating new holiday classics is rare, and maybe it's just not as important. Perhaps the reason is because we have all the holiday specials we need. Feel-good holiday movies of romance and redemption on repeat are offered anywhere from June to January at our friends at Hallmark. And maybe those are the holiday specials of today. I mean, there are 24 of them to get your fix. But for this very small elite group, this club of special TV classics, they know who they are. They knew they gave a couple of generations exactly what they needed. And perhaps they'll give a couple of generations more something to discover. It doesn't take the ghost of Christmas past to reveal what made those classic specials. One TV households, for starters. The shared experience of gathering all together in front of that one TV was a major part of it. It was the era of the TV dinner, after all. There was so much new content year after year we never dreamed of. Because it was a one-and-done broadcast scenario, we could never get tired of it. We anticipated their arrival like Christmas morning, and they were just as much part of the tradition of the holidays as baking cookies and hanging up holiday stockings. The emotional connection of the family unit bonding together, intently focused on and subconsciously being fed messages of hope, goodwill, giving, and peace, all while being taken on an exciting adventure, was a once-a-year thing. Once it was done, we just only had the memories to go off of. We couldn't rewatch. They were the visions of sugar plums that danced in our heads. We didn't go play with their accompanying action figures or see them in their syndicated glory every day after school. Only once. And we wouldn't have missed it for the world. And this was before FOMO was even a thing. Never was the title of one of my favorite Christmas carols more poignant than it is right now. The characters who populated these classic TV specials, they were family. And every year we knew they'd be home for the holidays. Thank you for watching Popcorn. I hope you enjoyed this Christmas special. If you haven't already, like, subscribe, notify, comment, and share this video. And I hope I can give you lots of more presents in 2021.